All right, another AAU Beach conversation at the Beach House in the Goudy Green Room, AAU Beach Studios. Got Dr. Roger Goudy, the President and CEO of the AAU. Roger, I bet that sounds different than your title when you first started with the AAU.
It sure does. When I first started with the AAU, I was just going to a convention in Chicago because I had a concern about some gymnastics rules.
Okay.
At the time, I was coaching gymnastics, and I went in there and I had a rude awakening because I didn't know the rule book, and they voted me out of the meeting.
Now, what got you involved in the first place with gymnastics?
Well, at that time, it was you were always scheduling events because there was no gymnastics leagues or anything. So I got the idea of why not just get a group of teams, 14, 15, 16 teams, and we'll schedule every weekend of the season, and we'll just rotate through the gyms. And the unbelievable reality is that that league is still in existence
today.
Yeah.
And wait, did that league already exist as an AAU, or did
No,
you thought the AAU was a good idea? Or?
I created it because I thought that I thought AAU was always good to me, and at the time, as an athlete, I was a pentathlete, and that's 100 years ago. But at the time, I thought it was a good organization, and it would be good for kids. And so we got involved with our gymnastics group, and again, I don't know if I think you interviewed earlier Joe Gura. Joe Gura was one of the first people in the league. Then I got to a third person when we had 3 teams. I said, we got a league.
Wow.
And we ended up with, I think, 16 teams that year.
That's fun.
Yeah,
now, and how did you leapfrog over into volleyball?
Well, it's a long leap, but I got involved at the national level like everybody in AAU does. You start locally as a volunteer, and then you work your way into different committees and organizations. Well, I was involved with baseball, and baseball was really, at the time, I think 267 players across the whole country. And I thought there's got to be a better way, and so I was voted in as national chairman, and in 3 years we took baseball from 267 players total to the 3rd largest provider in the country.
And if I remember right, I think the president came to you and says, "Now go fix volleyball."
Now he said, "Can you do the same thing in volleyball?"
Yeah.
And the joke when I started in volleyball was Goudy can't even spell volleyball. So he said, "Can you do the same thing in volleyball?" Because at the time volleyball had about 2,000-3,000 members nationally. Okay. We were pretty much a regional organization out of the Chicago area. If you drew concentric circles around Chicago, you got less and less population as you went. So we tried the same thing. We got some good people involved, as you know, yourself, Gino, Bob Blanford, Joyce Cooney, Sharon Schatz is a new one, but at the time before her was Phil Mazer out of the Chicago area.
Sure.
And we started to develop what we thought was a good product, and we tried to replicate it across the country. Then 25 years ago, I believe, in Cabrillo Beach.
That's right. So now, the interesting part about that is I was talking to Gino a little bit about it, Gino Grajeda. Mm-hmm. He mentioned that I think the previous head of volleyball was Jack Schatz, maybe? He was not okay with beach volleyball. And what made you say yes?
Well, I've always tried new things. I think the success or failure of an organization is being able to go beyond where you are and look into the future. And you have to trust people, young people like yourself and Denny at the time, or Gino at the time, and say, hey, we want to try this. And at least allow people the opportunity to fail. And in this case, you didn't fail, because I remember coming out distinctly to Cabrillo Beach, and you had 16 teams, and I know Gino was down, and you weren't real happy about it. But I said, hey, it's a starting point.
Got to start somewhere is what I remember you saying. You got to start somewhere.
And this year, the North Coast, we started with a few teams.
Right.
But again, you're not going to start with 400 team tournaments, and that's kind of the misnomer in our all 41 of our sports, is that people think they're going to come out of the box with a 1,000 team basketball tournament. It doesn't work that way.
Nope, got to build it. Got to put the seeds in.
Yep.
Now, beach volleyball continue to grow, and then an astronomical growth with the indoor program. Mm-hmm. Astronomical. Mm-hmm. Now, tell me a little bit how the move was it because the headquarters moved to Orlando that it made sense for volleyball to be headquartered there, or was it the other way around?
Well, actually, at the time, we were in negotiations with the Walt Disney World Company. That was 22 years ago, I believe, maybe 23 years ago now. And it made sense. We had to, as part of that agreement, we had to bring 60 of our national championships a year to the at the time it was called Disney's Wide World of Sport.
Yeah, right.
Well, Disney has since rebranded it because, people in our age group know the thrill of victory and agony of
that's
defeat.
right.
You ask one of these kids about the skier going down the ski jump and falling off,
No.
they won't know what it's talking about. So when they rebranded it to ESPN Wide World of Sports and the top 10 and everything and replicated that for the young kids, people really started to identify with it. Well, I'm proud to say that we were the anchor tenants along with the Atlanta Braves.
Oh, that's right.
And they came to us, and we moved our headquarters down to Orlando. Well, seeing the writing on the walls, knowing that we had to have 60 national championships there, we ended up moving from Chicago to, I believe, St. Louis, and then St. Louis to Des Moines, and finally to Orlando.
Okay.
And the rest is history. We went from a 123-team tournament in Orlando, 123 teams, to 5 years ago we set the Guinness Book of World Records with 1,758 teams. And every year we've broken that world record. To this year we broke it by another 265 teams to 2,758 teams. And we're at least double the size of any other tournament in the world.
And one of the parts of that is involving club teams from different parts of the world.
Correct.
And that has really boosted the the exposure of the event overall, because there's this excitement of seeing the top American team play the top international team. Absolutely. And just seeing the international teams play. Absolutely.
And this year we had teams from 17 different countries, and we were very honored this year to have a gentleman by the name of Cristobal Marte in attendance at our national championships.
Yeah.
Cristobal is the head of NORCECA, North America, Central America, and the Caribbean islands, which is, I believe, it's 46 countries. And he's the first vice president of FIVB. So to say he's a big time person is to minimize it. But Cristobal was just thrilled with the event, and we're going to continue to do things, and even up to including possibly hosting some NORCECA events.
That's really exciting. There's also another part where I know you visited China, and I'm guessing that was on behalf of the entire AAU.
Absolutely.
But I think you also have some idea about volleyball could really be something in China. So, I mean, how does that fit into the whole picture?
Well, that is the whole AAU, and they kind of came to us. And if you know anything about the folks that do business in China, it's really probably about 75% about relationships. And over the last probably 5 to 10 years, we've had Chinese teams come to our event. We've always, not only Chinese teams, but all teams, we've treated them with respect and tried to have a good experience with them. Well, the word got around to the people that are in some power over there, and they approached us and said, we'd like to work with you because there's a new initiative in China by the current president where he wants to build 2.5 meters of recreational sports space for every Chinese resident.
Wow.
Now do the math on that. If 2.5 meters times 1.4 billion people. It's a lot of buildings.
That's a lot of meters.
And so then they looked around the world to different organizations, and we were kind of a perfect fit because you go to the NCAA, and this wasn't about colleges. You go to the high school federation, they're not going to be interested in that. You go to any of the governing bodies, and they're interested in their sport.
They're interested in their sport. You have the interest of all these sports.
Yeah, so they'd like us to be involved in some of the programming and developing the kind of not the top of the pyramid, but the base of the pyramid where most of the kids are at.
That is fantastic. So it sounds like you got a plan moving forward. Or at least multiple plans.
We like to think we have it, but it's an iterative process, and we are working on a plan in various sports. There's probably about 6 to 8 sports that they're genuinely interested in, and we've gotten plans in probably about 6 of them of how we can grow it. We've been working with Carl Lewis, the Olympic track athlete, and we work with different NBA players, and we're working with different people that we consider to be experts in that sport. Because if we're going to do this, we want to do it right, and we want to roll out a plan where these kids actually have an experience that's worthwhile.
So here in Hermosa Beach, I often compare the way Hermosa Beach embraces this national championship to kind of like Williamsport embraces a Little League World Series. I think you get a good feeling every time you come out here.
I do.
And there's a reciprocal that goes back and forth between the city. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know the first time you came was to Cabrillo Beach, San Pedro, different feeling than Hermosa Beach.
A little bit.
A little bit.
I actually a couple of years ago went back down to Cabrillo Beach just to see what it looked like.
Yeah.
And I just said, wow.
different.
A little bit of difference down there. But no, again, it's there's different functions for different beaches. This beach probably just happens to be one of the best in the world for beach volleyball. And actually, I was told the story by you or somebody else that the sand on Waikiki Beach actually
came from
the South Bay, which is kind of cool. And I think all the players will tell you with this deep sand and the clean sand that this is one of the best places in the world to play. And the folks have been from the City Council and the Rec Commission here, along with the community, have embraced us. I know the management of this property we're sitting in has been very, very good to us and has always treated us well. And when you build those kind of relationships, you just don't want to go away.
Yep. No, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Goudy.
Well, thank you, sir.
All right. Back to the national championships.